The war in Ukraine has entered a new phase: energy warfare. Since Russia's invasion in February 2022, headlines have been dominated by battles for territory and the human toll of the conflict. Now Ukraine is taking direct aim at Russia's energy exports, seeking to cripple a key source of revenue for the Kremlin's war machine. These actions have the potential to reshape energy flows to Europe and escalate tensions within the European Union. Ukraine's sanctions on Lukoil have sent shockwaves through Central Europe, particularly in Hungary, Slovakia and the Czech Republic. These landlocked nations are heavily reliant on Russian oil delivered via the Druzhba pipeline, and Lukoil plays a significant role in supplying this crucial energy source. The sanctions, if fully implemented, could disrupt the flow of oil to these countries, forcing them to seek alternative suppliers at a time when global energy markets are already tight. This situation highlights the delicate balance between punishing Russia for its aggression and ensuring the energy security of European nations. Adding another layer of complexity to the situation is the EU's current policy on Russian oil imports. The European Union, in an effort to curb Russia's economic power and pressure it to cease its military actions in Ukraine, has implemented a series of sanctions targeting various sectors, including energy. While the bloc has imposed a ban on seaborne imports of Russian crude, which was a significant step in reducing the EU's dependency on Russian energy, it has carved out an exception for pipeline deliveries. This means that while oil transported by sea is restricted, oil that flows through pipelines can still make its way into the European market. This exception was made to appease landlocked countries like Hungary and Slovakia, which are heavily reliant on Russian oil due to their geographical and infrastructural constraints. These nations argued that they lacked viable alternatives to Russian pipeline oil, as their energy infrastructure is deeply intertwined with Russian supplies. Transitioning to other sources would require significant time and investment, which they claim is not feasible in the short term.
This exception, however, has drawn criticism from some quarters, including other EU member states and international observers, who argue that it undermines the effectiveness of the EU's sanctions regime. Critics believe that by allowing pipeline imports, the EU is sending mixed signals about its commitment to fully isolating Russia economically. They contend that allowing continued pipeline imports provides Russia with a lifeline, enabling it to continue generating revenue from its oil exports. This, in turn, reduces the pressure on Moscow to end its war in Ukraine, as the financial impact of the sanctions is lessened. The debate continues as to whether the EU should close this loophole to strengthen its stance against Russia or maintain it to support its member states with limited energy options.
The sanctions on Lukoil have been met with anger and resistance in Hungary and Slovakia. Both countries have long-standing energy ties with Russia and argue that the sanctions will disproportionately harm their economies.
Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, a vocal critic of the EU's sanctions policy, has accused Brussels of shooting itself in the foot by targeting Lukoil. He argues that the sanctions will drive up energy prices for Hungarian consumers and businesses, jeopardizing the country's economic recovery.
Section 5. The Druzhba pipeline. A lifeline for some, a thorn in the side for others. The Druzhba pipeline, which means friendship in Russian, has become a symbol of the complex energy relationship between Russia and Europe. This massive infrastructure project stretches over 4,000 kilometers, making it one of the longest oil pipelines in the world. Built in the 1960s, during the height of the Cold War, the pipeline carries oil from Russia to several Central and Eastern European countries, including Hungary, Slovakia, the Czech Republic, and Germany. These nations have relied on the steady flow of oil to fuel their economies and maintain energy security. While the pipeline provides a vital energy lifeline for these countries, ensuring that industries run smoothly and homes stay warm during the harsh winters, it also represents a strategic vulnerability. The dependency on Russian oil has been a point of contention and concern for European policymakers. Russia has demonstrated its willingness to use energy as a weapon in the past. cutting off supplies during political disputes and leveraging its energy resources to influence European politics. The Druzhba pipeline could be used to exert pressure on European nations that oppose its actions in Ukraine. This geopolitical tool has the potential to disrupt economies and create political instability, making it a double-edged sword in the realm of international relations. As a result, many European countries are now seeking to diversify their energy sources, investing in renewable energy projects and exploring alternative suppliers to reduce their reliance on Russian oil. The future of the Druzhba pipeline remains uncertain as the balance of power and energy dynamics continue to evolve in the region. Section 6. The bigger picture, the EU's energy dependence on Russia wanes. Despite the continued flow of oil through the Druzhba pipeline, the European Union has been actively working to reduce its reliance on Russian energy sources. This pipeline, which has been a critical artery for oil transport, symbolizes the historical dependency that the EU has had on Russian energy. However, the geopolitical landscape has shifted dramatically in recent years. It's important to note that the EU has made significant strides in reducing its overall energy dependence on Russia. This shift is not just a reaction to recent events, but part of a long-term strategy to diversify energy sources and enhance energy security. The declining oil imports chart and the EU's efforts to reduce Russian oil dependency highlight the progress made in this area. European oil storage facilities are now more diversified, storing oil from various global suppliers. Since the invasion of Ukraine, the urgency to find alternative energy sources has intensified. The conflict has underscored the risks associated with over-reliance on a single supplier, especially one that can leverage energy as a geopolitical tool. The EU's sanctions on Russia have further complicated the energy dynamics, pushing the bloc to accelerate its search for reliable and stable energy partners. The bloc has scrambled to secure alternative supplies of oil and gas from countries like Norway, Algeria, and the United States. These efforts include increasing imports of liquefied natural gas, LNG, and negotiating long-term contracts with these nations. Oil tankers from Norway and LNG terminals in Algeria are now common sights, symbolizing the EU's commitment to diversifying its energy portfolio. The United States has also become a key player, exporting significant amounts of oil and gas to Europe.
The EU has also set ambitious targets for renewable energy development. Wind turbines and solar panels are becoming increasingly prevalent across the continent as the EU invests heavily in renewable energy projects. These initiatives are not just about reducing dependency on fossil fuels, but also about leading the global transition to a more sustainable energy future. The EU is also focusing on energy efficiency, aiming to reduce its reliance on fossil fuels in the long term. Energy-efficient buildings and smart grids are part of this strategy, helping to lower overall energy consumption and make the energy system more resilient. EU energy-saving initiatives are designed to encourage both businesses and consumers to adopt more energy-efficient practices. These efforts are part of a broader strategy to break free from Russian energy dependence and enhance the bloc's energy security. EU energy independence projects and strategy meetings are now regular occurrences, with policymakers and industry leaders working together to chart a sustainable and secure energy future. The European Parliament is actively discussing and implementing policies to support this transition. Enhancing the bloc's energy security is a multifaceted challenge that requires coordinated efforts across various sectors. Power plants in Europe are being upgraded, and new energy infrastructure is being developed to support this transition. The EU's commitment to energy security is evident in its comprehensive approach, which includes not only diversifying energy sources, but also investing in new technologies and infrastructure to ensure a stable and sustainable energy supply for the future.
While Ukraine's latest sanctions target oil flows, the country also plays a pivotal role in the transit of Russian natural gas to Europe. Ukraine operates a vast network of pipelines that carry Russian gas to consumers in Central and Western Europe, generating billions of dollars in transit fees for the Ukrainian government. Ukraine has threatened to halt the transit of Russian gas through its territory, which would have a significant impact on European energy supplies. However, such a move would also come at a cost for Ukraine, depriving it of crucial transit revenue and potentially damaging its relations with European partners. Hungary, with its heavy reliance on Russian energy imports, is particularly vulnerable to price hikes and supply disruptions. The country's energy policy, which prioritizes low prices for consumers, has come under scrutiny in light of the war in Ukraine. The Hungarian government has been forced to implement energy-saving measures and provide subsidies to cushion the impact of rising prices on households and businesses. The situation highlights the challenges faced by countries that are heavily dependent on a single supplier for their energy needs.
The future of Russian oil flows to the EU remains uncertain. The bloc is under increasing pressure to tighten sanctions on Russia, including potentially targeting pipeline deliveries. However, such a move would likely face resistance from landlocked countries like Hungary and Slovakia, which are heavily reliant on Russian oil.
The EU is also grappling with the long-term implications of the war in Ukraine for its energy security. The bloc is accelerating its transition to renewable energy sources and seeking to diversify its energy imports, but these efforts will take time to bear fruit.
The sanctions on Lukoil represent a significant escalation in the energy war between Russia and the West. Ukraine's actions have exposed the fault lines within the EU, highlighting the bloc's struggle to balance the need to punish Russia with the imperative of ensuring its own energy security. The outcome of this high-stakes game of energy politics remains to be seen. However, one thing is clear: the war in Ukraine has fundamentally reshaped the energy landscape in Europe, with lasting consequences for Russia, the EU, and the global energy market.